Hello, folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you're doing well. Hope you're staying safe, taking care of those closest to you. By the time you're listening to this, I will have returned from North Carolina, attending my good friend, avid listener, friend of the show, listener, former guest, my friend Leo Quinn's wedding. Congratulations again to my friend Leo and Emily. I wish you both the best, and I'm so happy that I was able to attend. And I will also be recording this the day after the World. This is coming out the day after the World Cup final, in which France will either be repeating champions or Argentina will have won, and Lionel Messi will have cemented his status as the greatest soccer football player of all time. Soccer for my American listeners, football for my international listeners. So I'm pulling for Argentina. I have many friends in Argentina, and I want this for them. And so, man, what has happened? What hindsight will I bring when I do the intro for next week's monologue? But we are coming up close. It's also the Hanukkah has started, so happy Hanukkah to everyone celebrating. Looking forward to annual latke party that I do with my wife and friends, and coming up on Christmas as well. And that means that we will be having the annual Paul Cohen Holiday Pop Punk wrap-up episode very soon. So look forward to that. Get some excellent music recommendations for stuff that came out in 2022. And not to tip my hat too much, but there might be a podcast exclusive live performance from the podcast by Paul as well, of a song from the recent Backdoor Barbecue live shows that we did at the People's Improv Theater. But all that to say, a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff I'm interested in, and thank you all so much for being here for it. And and today's episode, this is a good one. My friend Jack, who recently appeared on the podcast, friend of the show, connected me with the band The Campbell Apartment, and this is my interview with their bass player. Guest on the show today is Kevin Frank, bassist for The Campbell Apartment, a great San Francisco bass band, and we talked at kind of like a pivotal moment in his artistic and professional career, and we certainly get into that in the podcast as well, which again the sort of balance between awesome and disaster moments over the course of one's life. He's kind of feel like he was at the minute of one of those could go either way sort of times, and I was excited to get to chat with him. Kevin's I love the Campbell Apartment's music. If you are into like the brighter side of 90s alternative rock, you should absolutely check out the Campbell Apartment. And Kevin is a cool guy. Really enjoyed getting to chat with him. And if you enjoy this podcast, you can listen to the Campbell Apartment everywhere you get your music. And if you are interested in hearing more about me, you can go to awesomedisaster.com for links to everything related to Will Carey and what I do. All my social media's there. All of the links to the podcast. You can tell friends. Everything related to me is at awesomedisaster.com. So thanks all so much for being here. Hope you're having a spectacular holiday season. And if you're traveling, stay safe. I still wore a mask on the plane. And be well to each other and be excellent. And let's talk to Kevin Frank. To prepare, I've been going. I was listening to Curmudgeon a bit before
cool.
we got on here, and similar to when I was talking to Jack's how I found out about your band. Like, I feel like the style, and I mean this in the most complimentary way possible. There is a kind of like there's a sort of vibe of like 90s like alternative rock, and sort of like that sort of like alternative to grunge that was happening at the time.
Yeah.
It's sort of more like upbeat kind of indie rock.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And
I know you said you don't mean to disparage us or something like that, but yeah, I mean that's absolutely what we are, and I think it's okay to, like, we definitely have, we're definitely influenced by grunge, but I think there's something to be said for, a little bit of happy, fun, bubblegummy power pop in there too.
Oh, absolutely. Like love that kind of stuff. Like when I really sit and and think about it, like the Ramones were essentially just like a faster version of like all those like teeny bopper bubblegum bands from like the 50s and
Totally,
60s.
totally.
Like all of like the Ohio Express and like the
Yeah.
1910 Fruitcum Company and all that stuff.
Well, because
And
they can only play four chords, so that's that's all the
yeah,
Ramones could be.
yeah, exactly. And just just play it as fast as humanly possible. But
Totally.
like just and I'd love to get your approach to to kind of this vibe as songwriting. So like stylistically, like you kind of start with grunge, but then sort of like take like the I would say some of the more like angsty like punk and metal aggression out, and then there's room for this sort of like I would almost say like a modern take on what the Beatles would be if they came out in the 90s.
Yes, we are exactly like the Beatles in every single way. No, well, I mean, it's interesting that you bring the Beatles up. I mean, we are all huge Beatles fans and huge Beatles nerds, and
Uh-huh.
like the band actually almost helped me rediscover the Beatles a little bit.
Mhm.
I was growing up, I was a huge Beatles fan, and I listened to that, and I listened to classic rock, and I sort of made um, a really concerted effort to get away from classic rock because I was like, oh, it's not cool, it's classic rock.
Mhm.
But I, like those are my roots, and then the Beatles in particular. Like when I met Ari for the first time, we started talking about the Beatles, and I remember like at the first, when I auditioned, we did a quick cover of Paperback Writer because he wanted to see if I could sing backup. So it
Uh-huh.
just sort of like resparked my, it just reminded me like, oh yeah, how much I love the Beatles. And so like, yeah, when we do music, it's like, yeah, it's pop and it's punk. But the Beatles harmonies and melodies and approach to songwriting and the hooks that they write, I mean, they're the Beatles for a reason. And so, yeah, I mean, they're a huge influence in my music and the band's music for sure.
Oh, totally. And I was even kind of feeling that sort of vibe, and I'd love to ask you this as a bass player who's trying to break outside the mold of root notes and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I would almost feel like because I always felt like, and I would love to ask about your approach to bass guitar, because I always feel like Paul. Lots of times, sure he would play like root notes when he had to, but he there's lots of songs, and I feel like Campbell Apartment has this as well, where I feel like the bass is almost kind of driving the melody and the groove of the song while the guitars and drums kind of lurch and like race cars almost like along with
Yeah.
the beat.
Yeah. I mean, Ari definitely gives me that room to play melodically. And one of my biggest influences, the way that I learned how to play bass guitar is I just sort of played along with Led Zeppelin too, until
Uh-huh.
I could play, until I could play every song on that record. And like I said, I was very, I have my roots in a lot of classic rock, but that was the way that John Paul Jones played was he played the bass as if it were a lead instrument. And so,
Mhm.
like many folks learning an art or a trade or anything, you start out by copying and then you find your own style within that. So I was really heavily influenced by him and the way that he plays very melodically. Another player like that is John Entwistle, obviously in the Who.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to remember the quote. Like somebody once said, like the Who is a band with a rhythm guitarist and a lead drummer and a lead bassist, or something. Something along those
Uh-huh.
lines. And again, you listen to Entwistle's lines, and he plays really melodically. So it's both. That's the kind of music that I listen to. Um, just playing root notes, it's not that interesting for me either. Like I play bass to
Sure.
have fun, and if I'm just playing 1/4 or 1/5 all day long, it's like there's nothing
Mhm.
that there's it's not as interesting. So I enjoy playing melodically like that. Having said that, like I played in a funk band for a little while, and that was very much like you're just part of the machine, right? Like it's
Mhm.
part of creating that rhythm, right? There's that old James Brown story where he was auditioning a guitar player, and he said, "Hey, can you play a C9?" And the guitar player said, "Yeah." And James Brown said, "Great, can you play it for 2 hours straight?" or something like that,
Uh.
right? Um, and yeah, I mean, there's a pleasure I take in sort of being able to to hit that root and play in the pocket and play the groove. But for the Campbell Apartment music in particular, yeah, I just the music that we write is melodic. It gives me space to kind of stretch out when I need to, and and lay back when I need to. But I definitely enjoy playing that way. And I know you were mentioning to bring it back to Paul McCartney again, like also just another huge influence in my playing. And when I think about songs like, I mean, he plays lead lines on so many things, but things like something, right? Even though that's a George song, like that's a
Hmm.
classic one where he's playing the melody in the bass line as much as George is playing lead on that. So yeah, I just it's fun to play melodically, and that's how I learned was playing along with players like that.
Uh-huh. Well, because it definitely is, I think, different from like what a lot of bass playing you hear like maybe on like big pop bands doing. So like when you hear something different like that, it's kind of uh it's really cool and interesting. I feel like the same way about like Matt Freeman in Rancid, great another great Bay Area band,
Yeah,
like where the guitars like Lars and Tim are just doing this kind of like buzzsaw punk ska thing, and then Matt's like just all over the neck throughout the entire
yeah.
song when he
That's cool.
needs to.
I'm not actually super familiar with their music, but I will go and check them out for sure because I again like I love really
Mm.
just hearing how other bass players approach the instrument, and seeing what I can learn, and even steal, shall we say, from them.
Oh,
So
sure, sure.
I love that.
Oh yeah, they're legends for a reason in like
Yeah,
the punk scene.
yeah.
And Out Come the Wolves, one of the greatest records. I love that record so
Cool.
much.
All right, I'll check
That,
that out. I'll put that on my
that's
list.
a that's an absolute great one to start with. Um, so did you start off on bass? Was bass your first instrument when you were growing up?
It actually was not. I was plunked in front of the piano when I was in second grade,
Uh
because
huh.
piano lessons were what was done. That was that was.
Yeah.
I don't know that my parents knew enough to say like, oh, you're going to take guitar lessons or bass lessons, or I mean my dream actually would have been to be a drummer, but obviously like drums were too loud for my parents, and there were no electronic drum
Hmm.
kits when I was a kid. So
Sure.
piano
Yeah.
lessons were what I got. And yeah, I mean, I think I followed this sort of classic piano lesson track, doing Hanon exercises, da 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 da, that stuff, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, the tuna fish. I'm trying to remember like my very first book. There was like the tuna fish song, which went da 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 da
Oh.
da
Uh
da
huh.
da da da. Remember the tuna fish song and hot
I
cross
don't
buns
know.
and all
Hot
the
cross
classics.
buns. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can rock
Um,
some hot cross buns on the
yeah, some
quarter.
HCB, I think is
Uh huh.
what we call it. And then of course, and I remember Star Wars. This again, like I'm sort of dating myself, but like Star Wars had come out fairly recently, and so like me being able to learn a very very basic version of the Star Wars theme on piano was a big achievement for me. So that was
Amazing.
exciting too. But yeah, so anyway, I mean, I took piano from probably second grade till fourth or fifth grade, and I just like I just didn't like it.
Hmm.
And I think it's not that I didn't enjoy playing. It's just I didn't enjoy knowing that my folks were upstairs listening intently to me to make sure that I was practicing for as long as I should and
Right.
exactly what
Right.
I should. So I kind of gave it up for a few years. And then, and by the way, I'm not going to disparage my parents too much because music is one of those things that my folks said, you're going to do music and you're going to thank us when you get older. And they were absolutely right. Like, them
Uh
giving
huh.
me the gift of music is
Yeah.
something that, I value every day. And so, I'm joking that
Hmm.
when they made me do that stuff. Anyway, they found a jazz piano teacher who lived in my town or lived really close by, and his name was Bruce Torf, and I think he's still around. I think he's a professor of music somewhere in the Midwest now. And his brother
Uh huh.
Brian Torf actually was a bass player, a jazz bass player who played with George Shearing for a long time. So really
Oh,
well
wow.
known well known bass player. Yeah. So and my dad listened to a lot of jazz, and so going from the sort of standard classical repertoire of music that I didn't really listen to and didn't really enjoy to starting to
Yeah.
learn how to play jazz and to play improvise and to improvise was like an awakening for me. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, so that really that was my early music education. Is I played a lot of jazz. I was lucky. My high school actually had a jazz band where it was, you know, an hour that we got together every day and we just like played music. It was, you know, like that was how I started playing in bands as well.
Yeah.
Um, and then when I was in college, you know, like I said, I actually played in a band in high school that did a lot of Led Zeppelin covers and, you know, getting back to
Uh-huh.
Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And John Paul Jones, obviously, one a bassist who also played piano, and there, you know, there are several
Hmm.
sort of bassists out there that are bass piano combos like Geddy Lee and Rush, and I'm sure those are the two that come to mind immediately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
um, so you know, I started listening to a lot of Led Zeppelin, and I used to like screw around with the bass player's bass when I was in this high school band. And then when I got to college, I just saw like a note up in the laundry room, and somebody was selling a bass for $50 or something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, cool, I should try that.
Uh-huh.
You know, I had $50. I was like, you know, just meant I couldn't order pizza for a few weeks. So
Right.
I bought this like, you know, it was this, I think it was Cort, like it was one of these like real entry level bass
Hmm.
guitars. And then, you know, I just locked myself in my dorm room and, you know, put on Led Zeppelin 2. And I'm trying to remember like what other songs I learned to play along with, like, Day Tripper, like, you know, that, you know, da, da,
Hmm.
da, 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 like that's a
Yep,
good riff to kind of get your fingers strong. I used to
definitely.
play along with, you know, Jimi Hendrix Fire because that bass line was also like a really good workout, you know, on the
Hmm.
da 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 da, you know, like that stuff.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that's, you know, that's kind of how I got into playing bass. It was just, you know, a combination of like listening to piano players who also played bass, having
Hmm.
access to one, and a little bit like wanting an instrument that was more portable than a keyboard. I know that sounds like
Uh-huh.
a little topical. But yeah, like it was heavy lugging a keyboard around. I had this old keyboard from the '80s, this digital keyboard. Um, Actually, it was an analog keyboard. It was like the last great analog keyboard. It weighed like 60 pounds, and you know that plus my app. I'm like, well, if I got a bass, I could just like throw it in my gig bag and go to the show, and that would be much easier. So I know that was a long answer to a short question,
Oh
but
no, oh
bass
no.
was not my first instrument.
Oh no, this is great. It makes it's sort of kind of like an interesting progression because you're like you starting in classical music, very
Yeah,
very regimented, very specific. Not
yeah,
there's kind of like one way that it those songs are played,
yeah,
not a lot of room to stretch. And then you transition into jazz, which is all about creative freedom and all about like whatever you think you're gonna play. Just forget about that. Just kind of just
yeah,
do something that makes sense with what I'm doing. And you know, like I imagine like jamming on jazz like will make get the chops up really quickly because you have to be to play that music to like riff and
yeah. And
improvise and
again,
stuff.
yeah. I mean, I think there's this there's this narrative that like that I think you were just saying this, that like jazz is almost pure improvisation and free form and free flowing, and it absolutely is, but it's still that all that improvisation is based in a lot of theory. And I remember like learning all the scales and the modes, and so like you need to know all the notes you can play in order to pick the notes that you want to play.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of discipline in jazz. It's obviously not as regimented as playing classical or playing some rock. Um, but yeah, it was a really good way for me to start exploring again, back to that, you know, that question about how I play bass and how I can sort of play melodically. Like that background in jazz enabled me to get away from that, you know, root 4, root 5
Mm-hmm.
pattern that many bass players play, and you know, understand the scales and modes and melodies and harmonies that I could approach my playing with.
Yeah, you can see all the different possibilities that you could
Yeah,
play a song. You could play
ex-
it simply, you could play it melodically, you play it more
exactly.
complicated. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the, you know, one of the things that I've had to learn to do as well is to make those choices, because sometimes, you know, playing less is more, right? That was a famous thing that Miles Davis used to say, right? It's the notes that you don't play. So, you know, I want to have access to playing all the notes that I want to, but also know when to just sort of shut up and, you know, let one note do the talking, or no notes do the talking.
Absolutely. Somebody who I think was the master of like one or couple notes doing the talking was BB King.
Yeah.
Like he could just play like he'll just like bend like one note on like a 12 bar blues and that
Yeah.
just like shake it for like 10 minutes
Yeah.
and
Amazing.
like you could just have like the entire range of human emotions just in that one simple blues lick.
Totally. Yeah.
Um,
And I love that you bring up BB King. I played in like kind of a blues band in college. And again, like that was, if it's not obvious, like I like playing lots and lots of different styles
yeah.
and lots of different stuff, which is again, like it's fun for me to understand all those things. But yeah, playing the blues is just, again, like that's a great, it's a great example of, improvising within a very rigid form. And again, you have access to all the things you could play, but then you get somebody like BB King who just like, can play one note for an entire 12 bar blues. And it's just, he knows how to put that kind of feeling into it. There's another, so Dizzy Gillespie, I'm trying to
Hmm.
remember the song he does this on. I'll have to go look it up, but he can do the same thing. Right. And again, one of the greatest trumpet players of all time, and he
Yeah.
has the chops to play anything he wants at any time. And sometimes he just will play like one sustaining note for the
Hmm.
through an entire chorus, and it's amazing to hear him play like that.
Oh
So yeah,
yeah.
playing, making those choices again, sometimes you can make a much more powerful statement just with one thing. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, that's like kind of the splitting of like the musician side of the brain, which is like the craft,
Yeah.
and then like the songwriting side of the brain, which is what will make this part like hit as hard as it possibly can. Were your parents musical? Is that why you played piano from such a young age?
Yeah, they were. My dad in particular is a still a jazz piano player,
Ah.
and he grew up. So I'm from outside of Boston originally,
Hmm.
but he is from New York. He's from Queens, and
Ah,
he
I
grew.
live in
He
Queens.
Oh, you do? Oh, cool. He again he lived on Parsons Boulevard, which that's all I know about Queens, but I know
Oh,
that's
okay.
that's where.
I know what you're talking about. I'm not sure what neighborhood that's
Okay.
in, but I'll
Anyway,
find out by the end.
um, but
Sure.
yeah, so growing up, like, and he told me stories about like going to Birdland in the 50s and 60s and seeing Thelonious Monk and Dizzy Gillespie and and Bill Evans and I mean he saw all of the
Hmm.
jazz greats, and he used to play. I try to remember like what kind of combo he played in, but he definitely like played jazz gigs around when he was younger. And so when I was growing up, the way that I got into jazz was both him listening to jazz, but also him sitting down at the piano that we had in our house and playing his old jazz tunes that he used to play in his band. And now actually it's really great for him. He and my mom moved to a retirement community out in the East Bay here, and he's found like some other musicians, and we just went out a month or so ago,
Hmm.
and there was an arts and crafts fair out there, but he was the entertainment. He got booked as the entertainment, so
Oh, nice.
he was playing jazz standards along with a woman who was singing them, and it was just like, yeah, it was just amazing to still see him play like that. So yeah,
Uh huh.
he's a musician. My folks have been to our shows, and both seen the Campbell Apartment and in other bands, and we try not to play too loud for them. But yeah, no, it's I definitely come from that. And my mom is not a musician, but she's an artist. She's a really
Uh
great
huh.
painter. So again, just kind of growing up around that has been good
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah, you're just kind of surrounded by creativity.
Yeah.
And what'd you go to college for? Was that for music or for something else?
I was for something else. Another sort of like story of a pivot is what we like to call it in the San Francisco tech community.
Uh huh.
I said, I started off playing piano, and I pivoted over to bass guitar. I went to college, like my education was very traditional, like good student in elementary and high school, and did well on my SATs and went to a good school. And um, I was pre med because the only things that I knew that you could be were a doctor or a lawyer or a businessman, and I didn't quite know
Hmm.
like what a business
Yeah,
person
just general
was.
business.
Yeah, like you
Uh
could
huh.
just do general. So I was actually pre med, and I did all of my organic chemistry and physics and math and biology and all that stuff. And I took my MCATs, and I graduated, and I was like, maybe I'm gonna let me think about this. So I took a couple of years off. I was really lucky that I had the opportunity to move out to Colorado. I got a job as a ski instructor in Vail, and that sort of helped me. Um, and it helped sort of focus me to say like, wow, I could get. I'm sure I would have been a fine doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not passionate about it. And I have friends, and I remember like one friend I grew up with, him coming back after his freshman year of college, and he's like, "Oh my god, I discovered biology, and we dissected stuff," and like he was so into it. And now he's a really successful radiologist, and he loves what he does. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't my passion. Like I'm sure I would have been competent, but it wasn't what I loved doing. And so skiing, getting
Right.
up every morning and getting paid to teach skiing, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I don't know that I want to do this forever, but is there something that I could do for a long time that's, that I am passionate about? And again, back to creativity, the thing that I had always been passionate about and reasonably skilled at was writing and creative writing.
Yeah.
I was never a great long form writer. Like I wasn't going to be a novelist or a screenplay writer, but advertising
Mm-hmm.
always really appealed to me. And also maybe because
Uh-huh.
I wasn't allowed a lot of television as a child, so it was like a little bit of
Sure.
the forbidden fruit. So I made that pivot, and I got a job in advertising. So that wasn't, I never even knew that was a thing until after I started to, was old enough to understand that there are other things besides doctor, lawyer, businessman. And that's what I've been doing for the greater part of my career. I started off as a writer in an advertising agency, writing TV commercials and
Mm-hmm.
websites and print ads and all the things that you'd expect, and have just sort of followed that career path to more responsibility. Most recently, I led creative for LinkedIn,
Uh-huh.
and actually, I recently left the job, which gets back to the title of your podcast, Between Awesome and Disaster.
Yeah. Right.
I had a really really good position, and and it wasn't making me happy, so I decided to leave it. So, I don't know if that was a really good smart move or if it was a really awful disastrous move, but I'm sort of sitting
Uh-huh.
right there as we speak. I'm sitting between awesome and disaster.
Yeah. Well, yeah, time will tell which side we're gonna land on.
Yeah, right.
uh wow, wow, that's well, I'm gonna say congrats on taking the leap, because
Thank you.
I always know that that's scary, but it's exciting, and like there's
Yeah,
a
yeah, it is,
there's
and I know that I. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say you go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was gonna, yeah. I also want to acknowledge, like, I am exceptionally lucky that I'm in a position that I can take some time away and figure out what I want to
Sure.
do next. I know that not everybody has the luxury of doing that, and also I
Mm-hmm.
have a very very supportive spouse who is totally okay with that. When we started talking about that, she's
Mm-hmm.
like, whatever you need to do for your own, for your own sanity and mental health, I'm going to support that. So yeah, I mean, I it's a scary time, but I'm also exceptionally lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Good on you. And you've been in the Bay Area for a while now.
Yeah, I moved out here at the end of '99. It was
Uh-huh.
right at the end of the first right before the first .com bubble burst. And again, I moved out here for an advertising job, not for a tech job. But
Mhm.
those first 6 months were really cool. Like there were I don't even remember, there was a company called like chickclick.com, like this crazy, anything.com, and you could get VC money, and they would um, throw these lavish parties. I remember going to like the San Francisco MoMA, and showing up, and there was like free trays of sushi and top shelf liquor, and I'm like 30 years old, and I'm like, wow, this is great. This San
Uh-huh.
Francisco is amazing. And then of course, like 3 months later, everything completely imploded. But
Yeah.
it was a neat time to it was a neat time to move to the city. But again, I didn't move here for that. I moved here just because I really like San Francisco. I like being able to be close to the ocean. I learned how to surf when I came out here. I like being close to the mountains. Like I said, I'm a big
Uh-huh.
skier.
Yeah.
The culture here is amazing, like amazing food, great music, interesting people. So yeah, it's been enough to keep me around here for almost 25 years.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've spent some time in San Francisco and have really liked it.
Oh, cool.
So
What are what kinds of things do you remember about being out here? What did you like?
um the couple times I've been out there, well, it was my first time going to Amoeba Music.
Oh yeah, of course.
That was
That's an institution, that place.
yeah, that was life changing. So I had to peruse their like extensive foreign film DVD section, their extensive punk rock section.
Yeah.
There's a great restaurant called, I think, Burma Superstar. That's
Yeah, it's still around.
I made sure to take my wife there when we did this big California road trip this
Yeah.
past this year, which was great. And I took her. I was like, you got to get this salad and this green tea leaf salad
Yeah, it's amazing. It's so
and
good.
for her and for her to hear me talk about vegetables like really excitingly is like wild, because like I didn't eat a vegetable, I think, until like I was 23 or something like that.
Well,
Love
that's better than me. I don't think I ate one until I was 30. So,
Yeah. So I
um,
loved that place. And then of course had to do like, go see the painted ladies, and then like
yeah.
I think there's a real I seem to recall there being like on like kind of the bottom corner of I can't remember the exact name of the park, but there's just a lot of really great like gelato and ice cream
Yes.
in San Francisco. Like Polly
Yeah.
Ann's is another
Yeah.
one.
I don't know. I actually don't know that place. I'll put that on my list of things to check out now too. My list is like slowly growing through this podcast.
Oh, it's great. It's like a Chinese ice cream shop, so you have lots of like, lychee,
Oh,
rose,
cool.
durian flavor, like a lot of interesting flavors.
Got it. Got it.
So I'm a big fan of San Francisco, and sadly, one of my favorite places that I don't think exists anymore. There's a place called Brainwash. I don't know if you've heard of
I
it.
don't know that place now.
So it is a restaurant combination. It was a restaurant combo, laundromat combo, arcade that would also host comedy open mics.
Oh, that's cool.
So I remember my first time I was ever in San Francisco. I remember going to do a stand up open mic, and then there was like people playing pinball and doing their
Oh, that's awesome.
laundry.
Yeah,
It was
there's a new place. I don't know that place, but there's a new-ish kind of place called Free Gold Watch that's actually right around the corner from Amoeba.
oh cool.
That's like a old school pinball hall. They don't do stand up, but it's like it's a really cool little place to go and play old pins.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm gonna have to go back now.
Yeah.
That's great. And what was your exposure to the music scene out in San Francisco? I know about the only place I really know about is like Gilman Street. That was in
Oh,
San
in
Francisco, right?
Berkeley.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
right.
Gilman's across the bay. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So the all I really know about is like that's where like every like Green Day and like Jawbreaker, all that came out. What places, what was going on musically when you got to San Francisco, like
I'm
around the
trying to
time of the
remember.
Purple
It
Bears?
was yeah. When I first came out, I'm trying to remember what I would go and see. So when I was in Chicago immediately before I was in San Francisco, which was kind of in between Colorado and here. And I I had a friend who was really into rockabilly, and I never
Uh-huh.
had like the pompadour or anything, but
Uh-huh.
started to get into that scene. So I remember when I that was sort of what I was listening to when I first moved out here. So I remember going to see the Red Elvises and Horton Heat at Slim's because I was really
Uh-huh.
into them at the time. I'm trying to remember. I saw Southern Culture on the Skids somewhere. Again, I don't know how like marginal that scene was, but that's just what I was listening to at the time. But yeah, there were so many cool places to go listen to music. I mean, San Francisco is obviously a classic music town, but like the big places like the Fillmore. Like I remember seeing Ween at the Fillmore. Pretty soon after I moved here, I saw Willie Nelson. Like he played, I don't know if he still does this, but he played an engagement at the Fillmore every single year. So
Oh,
I
cool.
saw him play there. They're sort of like mid-size, like really good clubs. Like the Great American Music Hall is a classic one, and I saw the Blind Boys of Alabama play there. Do you know them?
No.
Oh, you got to go check them out. Amazing. I don't even
Written
know
this down.
I don't even know how to, I guess gospel maybe is how you would classify them. But yeah, so I saw them play there. And then there were these, the kind of smaller clubs, which are the kind of clubs that the band, that our band plays now. So, we love playing at the bottom of the hill.
Uh-huh.
We love playing at the Makeout Room. Um, there was a place called Amnesia that we used to, that closed, but we played at a lot. They get like good touring bands, and again, like the first time we got booked, the first time I got booked in a Bottom of the Hill, I was like, oh my god, we're playing at Bottom of the Hill. This is so
Uh-huh.
cool. So yeah, I mean, San Francisco has a good scene like that. It has good local clubs, and it also has bigger clubs that let bigger artists come through as well.
That's awesome. And is there like and does like San Francisco come out to like support its local bands still?
It's been tricky with the pandemic.
Sure.
And you can't talk about any live music without talking about the pandemic.
Oh yeah.
Um, but yeah, again, like I we've played a couple of shows in the last 2 or 3 months, and it's been really great. It's been really great to see the support again. Like we played at Bottom of the Hill a couple of months ago, and yeah, it was a really good turnout. There were probably like 50 or 60 folks there, and like
Oh,
that's a
that's
lot to be
good.
packed into one space. We played a show just a few weeks ago at a venue called the Lost Church, which is another one of my really really favorite venues to play at in San Francisco. It's a
Uh-huh.
little, I mean, it's literally underground. We couldn't. They moved, and they used to be in a neighborhood called the Mission, and it was hard to find then, and they just moved to
Mm-hmm.
North Beach. And I think there's a scene in the Blues Brothers where they can't find the gig or something like that. There's some movie and like we just couldn't like it's so underground like we couldn't even figure out where the entrance was.
Uh-huh.
But
Very
anyway,
Spinal Tap-esque.
yeah, right. So hello Cleveland. They couldn't find the entrance. Yeah, so like we're walking up and down Columbus Avenue, like trying to find the entrance to the new space, and finally like somebody came out and gestured us over. But anyway, even with the hiddenness of that space, people still, to answer your question, like yeah, people still came out to support the scene. So again, it's not, we're never like packing venues. I mean, I wish we could
Mhm.
pack an arena. We were never quite doing that, but we had a nice little following going, and it seems like yeah, it seems like it's coming back. It's not like pre-pandemic yet, but I'm
Yeah.
glad to see the community back out there supporting the local scene.
Very cool. That's this I have found that despite everything, like the scenes always kind of like rebound. They might morph or shift somewhat, but it
Yeah,
always kind of finds a way because I feel like people need music and people need to create.
yeah.
Like so, those two sets are always gonna find each other.
Yeah, I hope
This
so. I hope so. Again, it was so again like one of the things I love doing is playing live, and we didn't have that opportunity for so long. So, it's both the audiences and the artists, who have that opportunity to get back out live again. So yeah, it's good to see it's starting to bounce back a bit.
very cool. So speaking of the Mission, I've spent quite a bit of time there as well. That is like super funky fun place. It
Yeah.
reminds me kind of like Bushwick in Brooklyn a little bit,
Okay.
like similar sort of like lots of like uh lots of like like young creative types like doing weird
Totally.
things. Was the Campbell Apartment the first band you played in?
In San Francisco or just in general?
In general, like how
In
many
general.
different
How
bands?
many
Because
bands I've been in? So I was in a band in high school, and we were called, what were we called? Third Rail, because we're electric, and like that was my Zeppelin band. So we were playing
uh-huh.
like lots of classic rock, heavy covers, and a couple of originals, and I played piano in that band. Um, I played piano in a jazz band in college for a year or so. I played in a couple of different college bands. Um,
Hmm.
but the first kind of significant college band I played in was like, and this is what I was saying, is like it was a blues band, and I'm actually still in
Yeah.
touch with with the guitar player who now runs a music company. It's called Feed FM, and his company like if it
Wow.
enables public places to have music in the background. So anyway, he's stayed in that scene, and he still plays in a band. They're called Fuzz Collective now. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, so yeah, I played in a blues band in college, and then when I was living in Colorado in Vail, I actually played like in a bar band that um, played a lot. I mean, they played a lot of stuff like Brown Eyed Girl and Crowd Pleasers, but they also played a lot of
Uh-huh.
country music, and that was kind of my introduction. Like I said, I like to play everything,
Sure.
and that was kind of my introduction to country music. So I I'm trying to think like who getting into Willie Nelson and Hank Williams. And who else did we play? David Allan Coe. Like I'd never heard of David Allan
Uh-huh.
Coe and Cherry
Yeah,
Jeff
that's
Walker. Like real redneck. Yeah,
yeah.
Merle
Like
Haggard. Like
real hard
yeah,
living kind of
yeah,
dudes.
drinking in trucks and getting kicked out on by your wife kind of country music.
Yeah.
So that was
Yeah.
that was
And then
super
you
fun. Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say like the kind of country music where it's like lots of like Johnny Cash style like murder ballads. It's not like
Yes.
it's not like my wife left and I'm sad about it. Like my wife left because I shot her and I'm on the run.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, like Johnny Cash has that song. I think it's called Cocaine Blues or something like that. But
Hmm.
that's exactly the storyline where like he does a bunch of coke and kills somebody and steals something, and now he's on the run.
Yeah, I
So
remember
yeah,
that scene from Walk the Line
yeah,
vividly. I've started to kind of come around on country music in my in
it's
like my mid-30s. Like there's good songs to be had there.
yeah. I mean, there again, this gets back to like the beauty of simplicity. Like country music is not historically it's not like super complex, but it's like it's like the blues. There's beauty in those three chords, right?
Uh-huh.
And it's the same thing. And country music lyrics are are just the best lyrics ever. One of the ways that I like to write lyrics, and I know Ari likes to write lyrics, is we like wordplay, and we like being cleverness, and we like being thoughtful. And country music, I wish I had like a bunch of lyrics that I could pull out of my hat, but they're just so like they're just so smart and insightful.
Mhm.
I don't know. I heard some country song the other day where it's like people say I got a drinking problem, but it's no problem at all. Or I mean, like that's a classic kind of country lyric,
Yeah.
but it's fun. Um, and I think there's an old Willie Nelson quote where he says country music is three chords and the truth. And I'm probably misquoting that, but like that's
Is he
that's
the
the
one who said that?
as I could be missing. Yeah, I think so. I think that was his, and he could have been quoting somebody else, but I think that's him.
Okay, because I have said that on this show before describing
Yeah,
music cuz like again, like that's the all of my favorite kinds of music are generally that like, like old school country, blues, punk,
yeah,
like and all of that stuff is like all that stuff is very all those songs are really easily to boil down to a couple of key components. So
yeah,
that would make sense. That would make sense that he would say that.
yeah.
I've also heard Willie Nelson like has written a lot of songs that you would have no idea he wrote.
Yeah, like prolific songwriter. Like he wrote Crazy, right? Like that's a big one.
Uh-huh.
Crazy, da da da. I think Patsy Cline got famous for it. So again, like that's what it is. But he's like Carole King, or he's just or I mean, obviously Bob Dylan, or I mean, it's these songwriters that you don't know that they're their songs, but
Yeah.
yeah, he's absolutely prolific, and a
Y-
and a wonderful songwriter. Redheaded Stranger is still like one of my favorite albums of all
Mhm.
time.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I'm due for a Willie Nelson deep dive
I think
sometime
you
in
need,
my
yeah,
my
I
my near future.
yeah, you should go for it. But yeah, so anyway, I hadn't listened to country. That was another kind of genre that I had poo pooed my entire life, and then I started playing it and listening to it. I'm like, wow, there's some real beauty in this. And again, like I don't know, it's just sort of like added to my style now that I have that to lean into. And there's a song that the band plays called "Burn Baby Burn," and it's got a bit of a country introduction. And again, if I
Uh-huh.
hadn't if I hadn't played country music in the past, I wouldn't have been able to get the feel for that song right, or in a way that felt appropriate for the song. So I'm glad I have that to, to lean back on. Anyway, back to I'm trying to think like well, I'm getting closer to the present. So I played in a country band in Colorado. When I moved out to San Francisco, I played in an earlier version of this fuzz band that I was mentioning, and that was
Mm-hmm.
mostly a funk band. And then the Campbell Apartment came along, and yeah, I put a very very like I'd stopped playing music because my daughter was born, and that just took up all of my time. And when she was about 3 or 4 years old, I
Mm-hmm.
started to have the bandwidth to play music again. And I put an ad on Craigslist, a very, very specific ad that said like, hey, I'm not looking to quit my day job, but I also want to take music seriously. And I'm looking for like a, a, a power poppy, like I want to play music that's fun and that people like. This gets all the way back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right?
Uh-huh.
Like I want to play loud and fast, but I also want to play melodically. Um, I want to, I'd love to play like in a power trio, so there's nowhere to hide, and also like the less people in the band, the less. So the funk band had like 7 people in it, and it was just like impossible to coordinate practices. So
Oh
I was
my
just like,
God, yeah.
like I want like a power trio, and we're just going to be like real, and we're just going to play fast and fun and melodic songs, and and I like the Beatles, and if that sounds like
Mm-hmm.
you, then let's talk. And like I only got one response to the ad, but it was Ari, and
Uh-huh.
and then we've been playing together for like 6 years now, so it's been great.
That's really really cool. That's it's I love when stuff comes together like that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's excellent. And you guys have done 3 full-length albums.
I want to say I should know this. So I've been with the band for 6 years. As a Since I've been in the band, we've only done Curmudgeon, although we are hard at work at our next
Mhm.
album.
Nice.
Prior to that, I think there are 3 or 4. Mid 400 Records just put out like a best of Ari Weiss and the Campbell Apartment album.
Mhm.
Um, and then there's and then there's Insomniac's Almanac, and then there is one other that might be a shorter album. I really should know this because it's my own band, but I think I think we have at least three full
Mhm.
length albums, possibly 4.
Yes. And then there's In and Sundogs. Those are
Yes,
earlier
Sundogs. Thank you.
ones
See,
too.
this is why I have you here, because
Oh, of course.
you
Happy
can tell me our our records. Yeah, and it's
happy to
Sundogs,
help.
maybe EPs and not LPs.
Mhm. And have you guys done like a lot of touring, or have you mostly played like the West Coast, San Francisco area?
We mostly, yeah. I mean, we haven't done much at all in the last couple of years. We're just because
Mhm.
we were planning on releasing Curmudgeon right before the pandemic. We were starting to think about like what it would look like to tour. And again, I don't know that we would have done a big multinational tour, although that would have been fun. But we're definitely starting to look at like West Coast, like Seattle, LA, Portland, some venues around here.
Mhm.
That kind of fell apart, obviously, at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Now, like I was saying before, we're just kind of starting to ease back into playing. So we're definitely playing local gigs again, which is great.
Mhm.
And then we're, if we can start to expand and again at least play on the West Coast, I think that would be amazing. Like I said, I left my full time job, and I have some freedom and some support to do that. And I would love to, I'd love to go on tour. I've never done that before. Um,
Uh-huh.
and I'm lucky enough to have the means that I don't have to live in a van and go on tour. Like I could fly to
Right.
LA and, stay in a hotel room and play a show and go to bed by 11 o'clock and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah, I think that's and for nowadays that's the reasonable approach
Yeah.
to touring because maybe I feel like maybe a few years ago it could maybe feasibly make a little bit more sense to DIY your life and string a bunch of shows along,
Yeah.
but I think this approach is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Or one approach I've also heard. I took this like online like how to DIY band course
Yeah.
run by this like really guy named Ty Christian from a power metal band,
Okay.
and he describes this system called the rotating compass of doom, where you basically
I already
just
love it.
you start with where you are, you pick how long you pick, like the longest you are all willing to drive at once to get
Yeah.
back, and then you go out on Thursday. You do plan out 3 shows in like the major cities, like in one direction. You plan out like a Thursday, Friday, Saturday,
Got
then
it.
drive home on the Sunday.
Cool. Yeah, I've got. I
And
mean, I have so much to learn. Again, like I've never like for me, music has always been a hobby, and I really like playing shows, but it's always been local shows, and now
hmm
for the first time in my life, I have time to think about like, wow, what if we really took this thing to the next level? And so any kind of guidance like that is super helpful. It's to say like, okay, I don't know how to do this, but if
hmm
there's good guidance, good rules I can follow to say like, okay, how do I put a small tour together? How does that work? Where do I stay? What kind of shows should I play? I think that'd be great. So I've got a list. Like I'm like writing on the side
uh-huh.
all the things that I have to go check out after this, and that'll be on my list as well. So I mean, do you, on that note, like, do you have any thoughts? Because I mean, you're a stand-up. I imagine you've toured a little bit. Are there things that
I
you've
have,
learned
yeah.
that you think could be helpful for a band trying to expand their scope?
Things that I have things that I have learned. Typically, like when I've gone and I've done shows, it's usually I've been at that level where I've been like trying to go along with somebody.
Got it.
Not only is it more fun that way, but it also helps like as far as like draw, and then also like finding researching and finding like a couple of like cool bands in a city you want to go play in, and then putting something together
Got it.
with them, I found to be uh, the most beneficial way of doing, as far as like maximizing like people in the room for
Cool.
sure.
Well, if you want to come do something with us, man, come on out to San Francisco. Let's do it.
Oh, I absolutely would love to do that. Anytime. I'm got a couple things in the works, but I'm very much open to do that because I
Yeah.
love. I've come to love California. I've never spent like a ton of time on the West Coast until this year, and then I drove again from San Francisco down to San Diego, and
Yeah.
just now I
That's
get
awesome.
it.
And I love the idea that it doesn't all have to be like a 3 band bill. Like why can't it be like, a stand up and a band and something else? Like I think that makes the show more
hmm
interesting and more fun.
Oh, 100%, 100%. And like, there's even precedent for that. I'm pretty sure I remember watching this. I can't remember if it was a Wilco documentary or a Jeff Tweedy documentary,
Okay.
but before he would go on and be Jeff Tweedy, Fred Armisen would go on stage and do like weird characters
Yeah.
and stand up, uh, and people loved it.
Yeah. Well, and I mean Armisten's one of those guys too where he blurs the line himself anyway between music and comedy. Like did you see what's it called, Stand Up for Drummers, or the show that he did?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And that was actually in San Francisco. I think that was at the Great American Music Hall because I remember our drummer Steve telling me that he went to go see that and how amazing it was and how he like he got all the jokes
Uh huh.
because it truly was for drummers.
Oh yeah, I remember just laughing at like how oddly specific
Yeah.
certain things were.
Yeah.
And the other cool thing, I speaking of Fred Armisen, that I love about him is I remember a few months ago this guy started getting passed around. He did on the a panel bit on the Tonight Show where he
Okay.
went through every decade of punk music and kind of replicated the style of
Yeah.
that era. Like he did like the early Dead and like Sex Pistol stuff, and then you get into like the 70s and like more upbeat like ska kind of things, into like the 90s and 2000s. It was hilarious, and I was like, oh okay, these are all fake songs, but I would genuinely listen to them all if they were real.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. What do you if just to nerd out on gear for a second, what
Yeah.
kind of bass do you use? Because I've noticed listening to the Campbell Apartment stuff, and again, kind of coming full circle to maybe back to the Beatles. You go, it sounds like you go for that kind of like very like rounded, like
Yes.
kind of round, warm tone.
Yep, that's exactly right. So I have, and I'm actually not much of a gear nerd. I've had my same bass for like 30 years now. It's a P bass,
Uh huh.
um, sunburst finish, very classic. I got it in 1991, and it was a 62 reissue. So they,
Cool.
Fender's still doing like this reissue thing where they, take the original plans from their original instruments and build it to those specs. But what I find interesting is I was doing I was thinking about this the other day for some reason, and I was doing the math. When I bought the bass, 1962 is 29 years before 1991. So it was like
Uh-huh.
29 years vintage when I bought it, but now it's 2022. And so it's um, 31 years after I bought the bass. So anyway, does this make
Like
sense?
super
So
vintage.
so so basically, like the 1961 was closer to when I bought the guitar
Uh-huh.
than when I bought the guitars. It's anyway, it's more vintage now than it was when I bought it by that
Yeah,
math.
because like the amount of time between it being made and you getting it is
Yes,
now
that's
less than the amount of time you've had it to now.
yes, that's what I'm trying to get to that equation in my head. But anyway, so yeah, that's what I play. It's and it's got that, that's why I love P basses. And again, like this was I bought it very much like in my John Paul Jones era, and I know he plays like a jazz bass, but again, like the Fender jazz bass, the Fender P bass have that super sort of round, fat, smooth tone that I just,
Mm-hmm.
again, like I know there's a lot of other tones that basses get, and you can get snappy and poppy and trebly, but I don't know. I really like the way that it sounds, and I don't really have any pedals or effects, or I just go with the
Uh-huh.
way that it sounds, and sometimes I turn the treble up a little bit, and sometimes I turn it down a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
that's about all I do to it. The one I actually did on Curmudgeon, on the song I mentioned before, on Burn Baby Burn. There's
Uh-huh.
a section. So Burn Baby Burn is kind of like three songs all put together into one, and there's like the country song
Yeah.
at the beginning, and then there's like the real heavy bit, and then there's a bit in the middle that's a little bouncy, um,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and where it goes, "Hello, how are you?" and it's just going bump, 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 right? So real simple kind of bass line.
Yeah.
And when we were in the studio recording that, we recorded it at a place called the Complex, and the guy who runs it, George, has got like just an amazing array of instruments. And he said like, hey, this one on this part like kind of sounds like that sort of happy bouncy '60s, early Beatles kind of sound, to bring it back to the Beatles. And he had like a Hohner bass like McCartney plays.
Uh-huh.
So with I think it has nylon strings on it or something. So I play the P bass almost exclusively, but on that one song, I play the Hohner that George had in his studio to get that sort of like you know poppy, almost like, yeah, I don't know, like it's that sort of like round flat sound that Hohner has.
Yeah, I almost describe that sound because it's definitely like present, but it's more like again more rounded compared to like when you crank the tone and it's more like metallic. It's almost
Yeah,
like if you're like trapped under like a heavy blanket and you're trying to like work your way out of it. It's almost like
I love that.
that's like the visual representation of
Yeah,
that sound to me.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and again, like what I like about, again, because my style is more melodic, and I don't it's I mean it's rhythmic, but I find like that sort of smoother, rounder tone fits my style a little bit more, and maybe like my style evolved
Hmm.
that way because I bought that bass. I don't know which came first, but
Uh-huh.
yeah, that's what I play almost exclusively.
Very, very, very cool. Yeah, I love Fender basses. They're to me just like the best sounding. And the one little bit of gear that I have that's sort of like the secret weapon I found from a few people is the
Yeah.
Tech 21 SansAmp.
Okay.
It's like an EQ pedal, but like you can plug anything into that and you click that on and it will sound really good.
That's awesome.
Like
That's
so that's
awesome.
sort of so because like in the I imagine San Francisco might be similar. In New York, you kind of just show up to a place with like maybe your bass head or and your bass and your pedals, and you're playing with a bunch of different backlines. There's not a ton of consistency, but I found this pedal is like the little bit of consistency that can kind of keep uh, the sound
Cool.
pretty similar
All
no
right.
matter
Yeah.
what.
I'll put that. I'm gonna put that on my. I'm getting so much out of this. Like I got so many things
Oh,
to go and
fantastic!
check out when we're done. The one other base,
Fantastic.
the one other base I will say that like I don't know if I'm gonna buy, but have been just sort of eyeing. It's like I don't remember what the model name is, but it's like a black heavy metal looking bass, and it's all like pointy and looks like like
Uh
the
huh.
devil made it. And I don't actually want to have it for its sound, but I think for live shows, just to have an awesome looking heavy metal bass would be fun. So
Oh yeah, it's especially compared to like with your band's style of music, I think
yeah,
that would be absolutely perfect. Totally.
yeah, just to be a wise ass on stage.
Uh-huh. 100%. Like I almost imagine like um during the it makes me think of like during the Hella Mega tour
Yeah,
last year that was like Weezer, Fall Out Boy and Green Day. Um Weezer was playing like Rivers from Weezer was playing like a really like lightning bolted DeFloyd Rose like
yeah,
pointy headstock
yeah,
Jackson
yeah,
guitar.
yeah. That's the one I'm thinking of. I want one of those
Oh, nice. Yes. Like
because
you'd
I
basically
would be.
be like Megadeth.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Because it would just be like so awesome to play one of those on stage. Ari actually just he just picked up. I can't even describe the color other than like electric lime green, I think. And
Uh-huh.
like the whole, I don't remember who makes it, but like, yeah, the whole base is like the head, the neck, the body is like it's just like this crazy neon green color. And so, again, I have no idea how it sounds, but I kind of want to borrow it for our next show just because it would be awesome to play that.
Oh, absolutely. That would be awesome. Um, Something else I wanted to ask you about bass playing. Like, if you're playing a song that's like more piano based, are you often playing bass guitar on like a more heavily piano based song? Do you change the way you would play compared to if it was more guitar based?
That's an interesting. It's an interesting question. I haven't. It's interesting because it's really timely. So I haven't played much piano. I don't think I played any piano on Curmudgeon, but there's a couple of songs that we're working on right now for the new album, and one in particular that has both bass and piano. And so yeah, the answer to this particular song is I um, I I try to play around what I'm playing on piano so it doesn't overlap. So both sonically, I don't necessarily want to hit the bass at the exact same time as I'm playing the bass note on piano because it could get
Right.
kind of muddy sounding. And also rhythmically, it gives me the opportunity to play some I don't know the official musical term, some counterpoint or something like that. So you know
Mm-hmm.
if I'm playing the bass in my left hand on piano on the on the beat, it gives me the opportunity to play something different on my actual
Mm-hmm.
bass. Um, so yeah, I'm it's a good timely question because I'm thinking about it right now and how I want to arrange and perform this one particular song that I'm thinking of.
Excellent. So that makes total sense to me. I That's very cool. So the new album is currently in the works. I know you have a single out now. Is Cheryl Noble?
Yep. Yeah. Go ahead. We're gonna ask something about it.
I was gonna say like lyrically in terms of like wordplay. I thought the title made me think it was gonna go one way, and then I listened to the song and was like, oh, completely different. I love the Chernobyl reference.
Yeah, and that one it's got a little bit of a disco feel.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off kind of real mellow with kind of a classic electric piano and just Ari singing. But then when the beat comes in, it's pretty like straight four on the floor.
Yeah.
And so we've actually been starting to play with that how we play it live as well and bring in a little more disco in. And that's actually a genre I'd never played before. So I had to,
Mm-hmm.
start. I had to start listening to a bunch of disco. My daughter actually, who's just turning 10, is really into top 40, and so there's a lot of new top 40 music that takes inspiration from disco. Like I've
Uh-huh.
listened to a lot of Dua Lipa lately, and you listen to
Sure,
her,
sure, yeah.
and it's like yeah, it's like it's just real heavy and octavey, and so yeah, I think like that song's a lot of fun because it's like firmly a power pop song. It's firmly an indie song, but it has some disco flavor to it that allows it to keep it fun and interesting.
Exactly. Like something to like keep people inspire movement,
Yeah,
inspire dancing,
exactly.
inspire fun. That is
Exactly.
totally very cool. I love that you are great that there's inspiration for you everywhere.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm gonna make sure that I take with me from this conversation, Kevin.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you just, I know it sounds like a huge cliche, but you got to keep an open mind. You always got to be learning. Like, that's. that's what keeps things interesting for me. It's what keeps things interesting for the audience. Is we take all of those influences and bake it into our own style, but there's always something new and fun to listen to and to learn.
100%. So you're working on the new album right now. So any idea when that might be out?
Hopefully early next year. I don't want
Uh-huh.
to. I don't want to commit to it because I don't want to let anybody down. But we have a lot of songs written. We've got like 10 or 12 songs written. We've already recorded several of them. Again, some of them we've released, like Cheryl Noble and St. Charles. We also released,
Uh-huh.
and
I like that
yeah,
one too.
we're working with a producer whose name is Chris Dunn right now, and we've been spending a lot of time with him, really getting the songs into shape. And what's great working with him as well is, as you know, a great producer brings that extra something to the music. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of recording over the pandemic because that's kind of how we stayed together, as people would send me tracks and I put something together in GarageBand. But there's a difference
Uh-huh.
between just kind of taking the tracks that everybody sends you and arranging them so that they sound coherent, and what a real producer does, which is like bring new ideas and sounds and textures to the music. And so we've been working with him to do that. So again, hopefully, we've got a lot of tracks written. They're in various states of finish, but my hope is that uh, early in the new year, or at least in the spring, we'll have it together and have it out in the world.
Fantastic. And folks, if you're listening to this, the singles that are out now, St. Charles and Shell Noble, are excellent songs. I really enjoyed them, and I'm looking forward to hearing more. And I'm going to talk to Ari soon as well, so that will.
Cool. Well, hopefully
I'm
he
looking
agrees
forward to
with
that.
everything. Hopefully he says exactly the same things that I say, and doesn't disparage any of them.
Totally. Is there anything else?
I told him I would say that I wrote all of the songs on this podcast, so he can.
Nice.
That's,
I've got to listen to his new record, Under the Pelican, too. He sent
yeah,
me a link to
yeah.
that.
I'm
I'll
sure. Again,
give
I'm
that
sure
a
he'll have a
listen.
lot to say about that. But it's been cool for me to listen to that as well, because I know
Uh-huh.
all the Campbell Apartment music really well, obviously, and some of the Pelicans songs have made their way into our catalog. But there's a lot that he recorded with them that's it's old, but it's new to me, and it's really interesting to hear how he has developed and evolved as a musician over the years too. So yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
should check out the new Pelicans record. It's called London Crawling.
Yes, I'm gonna give it a listen this week for sure. Is there anything else we can plug before we get out here?
Um, I don't I don't I don't think so. He said, if I
Mm-hmm.
had the shiny new album, I would hold it up and say, here, come listen to it. I would say just yeah, pay attention to us. We have a website called weareindyrock.com. That's a good plug for us. You can
Mm-hmm.
check out pictures of the band and videos that we've done, and hear our music, and see tour dates and see what we're up to. So that's a good, if you like our music or are more want to learn more about it, that's a good place to start.
Excellent. And if you need a stand-up comic to open for you, I am on the plane. I'm ready to
Please,
go.
please come.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin. This was a really great chat. I
Yeah,
really
this is
appreciate
great.
it.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. This has been super fun.
All right, that is Kevin Frank, bassist for the Campbell Apartment. You can get their music everywhere that you stream your music online, and I'll have links in the description as well. And get excited for a new album coming soon. I really enjoyed getting to chat with Kevin. I will be talking to Ari of the Campbell Apartment later this year, so look forward to that as well. And look forward to my hypothetical open stand-up opening set for them in San Francisco in the future, if I can get that to happen. So that would be pretty sweet as well. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. That's the show for today. If you enjoyed this podcast and know a friend who would be interested in this kind of show as well, you can send them to awesomedisaster.com. That has links to everything related to me. You can get links for the show on Apple, Stitcher, and Spotify. And if you are a listener on Apple Podcasts, if you could leave us a 5-star rating and review, that'll help us on that platform, and I would be sincerely appreciative. And you can follow me on all my social media at Comic Will Carry on Twitter, and then at Will Carry 23 on Instagram, and then I'm at Will Carry on Hive, and I'm on Mastodon as well. We'll see which one of those wins out in the long run. And if you want to go a little bit further in supporting the show, we also have a merch store at the website. You can get some t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, a lot of interesting stuff with some very cool designs. I've collaborated with a good friend of mine on the artwork. And you can also check out patreon.com/awesomedisaster and get a lot of exclusive content that I do not post anywhere else, just at patreon.com/awesomedisaster. And continue to be excellent to one another and do what you need to make your holidays the best that they are. And I'm going to keep watching Muppet Christmas Carol because that is my jam, as the kids say. So thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you next week between Awesome and Disaster. Stay safe, wear a mask, get vaxxed and boosted, get double boosted, and stomp out fascism. Take care, everybody.